Last time I introduced her, I talked about the bar was open at 3. This was after a Farm Bill meeting, but there's no bar open at 3 o'clock today. And but Betty is a new extension educator in ag business management, and we're excited because we really haven't had a regional extension person working with livestock and ag business parts. So it's really exciting to have Betty on board and working with issues like this. Dairy background. Worked in private industry, worked on lots of different things, so we're excited that Betty could come and deliver this part of the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Nathan. If you can't hear me during the presentation, raise your hand and I'll talk louder, or I'll actually stand by the microphone, but I'll try to be loud enough. Like Jim and Nathan shared, I'm Betty Berning, and I started with agricultural business management team just a couple months ago. I've been working in the dairy industry though for several years. My undergraduate degree is from the University of Minnesota in agricultural and food business management, and then I actually worked for AgStar Financial Services in Northwest Wisconsin as a loan officer for a few years after I graduated from the U of M. And then I went back to school and I got my master's degree in agricultural economics at Penn State University. And then, like any good Midwesterner, I returned home to Minnesota after that. That was enough. I lived in Wisconsin, I lived in Pennsylvania. That was enough being away from home. So I worked at General Mills actually for the last 6 years. I was in our sourcing function, and I helped I bought things, I bought packaging, I bought dairy for a number of years. I worked on some sustainability, which that was not something I volunteered to do. I will also add it was better than I expected. And then I did a lot of price forecasting and helped with risk management decisions. And now I started an extension in December. I'm really liking it so far, and did some Farm Bill meetings. I guess that was all last month. So this month now we're doing this. I live in Albertville. I did grow up on a dairy farm like Nathan shared. My brother still dairy farms, so we always have conversations about what the price of milk is going to do or feed, so that's been kind of fun. Today I'm going to talk about the economics of having robots versus having a low-cost parlor. My graduate work was actually around digesters, so it's the same idea, looking at an investment on a dairy farm and how can we do it in the best way financially possible, recognizing at the same time that sometimes we make decisions even if they maybe aren't the best financial decision because there's other considerations. There might be other reasons we want to do something besides money. So with that, I will jump in. I'm not as funny as Jim and Nathan, so I apologize for the lack of jokes up front. I'll try to think of some clever ones. So we'll start out talking about comparison of robots versus parlors, and we have several different scenarios. Hopefully your farm kind of fits into one, or you can see your way into one of them, but there's a lot of different ways you can splice and dice the data. Then we'll talk about the results. So financially, what do we see? The sensitivity analysis looks at, well, what actually, if things just change ever so slightly, what does that mean for my results? And then finally, I'll talk about those other considerations, those non-financial considerations. So with that, we'll jump right in. All right, our key assumptions on this were that the farm has 120 cows. We milk twice a day right now. 75 pounds of milk, mailbox price of $17.50. We looked at historical numbers and came up with that. 11.5 cents per pound of dry matter being fed, and then assumed a $15 per hour rate for any of the chore labor that was being done. For some of the higher labor, so if you're managing other labor, records management, we used a different rate. The financial piece of it, we looked at this over 30 years, so it does assume that you'd have to replace the robots. We assumed an opportunity cost of equity, so that's basically you're tying your own money up. You could be investing it elsewhere or doing something else. We assumed 2% on that. An interest rate of 5%. A down payment of $100,000, which, again, we had to pick some value, so that's what we chose. And we did assume that every time you made an investment, so let's say I invested in something at year 0, and then 5 years later, I invest in something else. Each time I make an investment, I put down $100,000. So in some of the scenarios, there is more cash put in. I think the other thing that's good to know too is we included other assumptions around the amount of time you're spending during the day doing chores, milking cows, heat detection, how much you're spending on insurance, how does that change as I increase my assets, how do my repair costs change, and then the other piece of it too, cost of replacement heifers as well as cull costs. So we tried to incorporate a lot of data that's not even up here too, to really give you a good robust picture of what this looks like. So if you have questions on specifics, we can talk about it at the end. So we'll jump in. Okay, this is my base case. So 120 cows, tie style, and milking in shifts. This is what I'm doing today. And I'm thinking about updating. So my first scenario is I'm just going to build a freestyle. I'm going to keep milking in shifts in my old tie style, but I'm going to build a brand new freestyle. And so what we see with that is, because of increased cow comfort, we'll see a gain of about 6 pounds of milk per cow per day. And then we also see that we reduce our chore labor because we have the cows in the freestyle, right? What are the negative impacts? It's not necessarily negative, but more if you think of it as what are the expenses. So the big things are going to be your cows are giving more milk. That's a good thing, but they're going to eat more, right? And then I have increased utility and supply costs. The investment on the freestyle, we assume $360,000. And then this net annual impact, essentially that's a big fancy calculation that tells you here's about how much you'd expect to get each year as a result of this. So it's positive, that's the important thing, it's a positive number. Okay, scenario 2, I'm gonna build that freestyle and I'm gonna take my old tie style and I'm gonna retrofit it into a parlor. So I'm gonna build a low-cost parlor. And what I see there is that I save more time on labor. I still get my 6 pounds of milk, right? Because the cows are in the freestyle. I don't necessarily save a lot because I'm just milking twice a day still in the parlor. Don't really get anything from changing my milking system, but I get that 6 pounds from the freestyle. Where I really get the savings though is on the chore labor. Now I'm milking cows in a parlor. I'm getting 50 cows through an hour. Things are going much more quickly. I'm saving some time. So we see our net annual impact goes up. And then when you look at the negative impacts, there isn't a whole lot. The changes between scenario 1 and scenario 2 are increased repair and insurance costs a little bit, and then increasing the utilities and supplies a little bit more. My investment, $435,000, so essentially this scenario assumes I'm going to spend $75,000 on a retrofit parlor. Third scenario, forget building a retrofit parlor. I want something new and shiny. I'm going to build a brand new parlor instead. And so what we see there is I'll save even a little bit more labor because it's brand new, the parlor that is. The cost, though, is going to be quite a bit more. Instead of spending $75,000 on a low-cost parlor, I'm spending significantly more to get all the bells and whistles and everything else. So all my costs are going to go up too. So as a result, what I see over here is that my net annual impact is going to be lower than the previous scenario. All right, fourth scenario, the robots, right? It's like Jim and I were talking the other day, this is like having the new cell phone. Like it's a gadget, it's cool. It saves us time. So when we do this, I'm going to get the robots now and I'm going to go to town with this. I'm going to build the fancy robot barn. I'm going to get all the bells and whistles. My investment is really big here, $1.5 million. So if I flip back to the previous slide, you can see it's going to be quite a bit more. And that's really not just the robots, it's also the assumption that I'm building the best possible robot barn. Okay, so what are the good things? What are going to be the benefits for me? Well, my milk production is going to go up 10 pounds against my base case. I'm going to assume I get four more pounds by installing the robot. So I get 6 pounds by building that freestyle, and then 4 pounds from the robots. I'm going to assume the cows are going to be going to the robots more than twice a day, so I'm going to get a milk gain there. And then I save quite a bit, 10.8 hours on my milking and chore labor because the robots are doing all my work for me now, right? Okay, what you can see though is the investment is so big, I still have a positive number here. It's positive, but it's really gotten small, and that's because the costs and the expenses are so much. Okay, well, what if I decide that, you know, just like my mom and dad always told me, I have to save my pennies. So I have money to build the Freestyle today, and then after 5 years of paying paying that down, I'm going to save some money and I'm going to put in the robots later. What does that look like? In this scenario, we also assume that we didn't need the biggest, fanciest barn possible, so the cost is a little bit less as a result. So here's what we see. I still get my gain in milk production of 10 pounds, the 6 from the Freestyle, and the 4 from the robots. And still save a bunch of time on my milking and chore labor, so that's nice. Over on the right-hand side, as far as expenses go, they look pretty similar too. I should note that I'm going to have increased records management with the robot system. With the AMS systems, we see some pretty great data coming out of them, but we do have to spend time every day or every week reviewing that so we can use it. So what you can see here, because I waited a little longer to build the robots, and because I'm not building quite as fancy of a barn, my investment's $1 million, so it's $500,000 less than the previous scenario. And that means my net annual impact is going to be a little bit bigger. Not as big as if I built a Parlor, but better and bigger than if I build robots today and go all out with it. Okay. We're almost close. We got one more scenario after this one. So I'm going to build a retrofit Parlor, and then 5 years down the road, I'm going to build a brand new Parlor. So I'm going to invest the $75,000 today so I can at least start saving something, and then I'm going to build the Parlor of my dreams in 5 years. And here's what we see. The investment's pretty big, not as big as the robots, but that gain in milk as well as the savings on the chore time, my net annual impact doesn't look too bad. All right, our last scenario is kind of with a twist. So some of you might not have 120 cows. We looked at just, what if I do 60 cows and I retrofit my tie-style barn to a Freestyle, and then I install one robot? So there's some ways I'm saving monies. I'm not investing in as fancy of a new barn, and I assume I'm doing all the labor right now too. Okay, so my increased milk production, I get 8 pounds. We assume that the converted Freestyle maybe isn't quite as comfortable as a brand new Freestyle, but I definitely get a lift in milk production. I save some time on milking and chore labor still. As far as expenses go, kind of the same things that we've seen across the board. The investment's going to be a lot less though, right? Because I have half the number of cows, and then I already have the barn. I'm just going to spend some money to update it. So my net annual impact, also positive, also larger than if I invest in the brand new shiny robot barn and 2 robots. So I know I just walked through a whole bunch of different scenarios, all of them with their own twists. Here's what they all looked like, and here are the differences between them. So what you can see, we got labor savings over here in the 4th column. Right here, you can see in any of the robot scenarios, that's where the largest labor savings occur. And that's what we'd expect, right? The robots are doing the milking for us. We also see that feed costs are the most expensive in the robot scenario. And again, that makes sense because if my cows are giving more milk, I'm going to have to feed them a little more to get that output from them. Okay, I see that my increase in milk production, also the highest in the robot scenario. Okay, that makes sense. And then I see that my insurance and repair costs are going to be the highest there too, which again, that makes sense. It's the most expensive scenario. There's a lot of repair costs that come along with having the robots. You can see though, in any of these scenarios, I'm going to see an increase in my milk production. I'm going to get more out of it. I'll be able to increase my revenues. And I can also see that my costs are going to go up a little bit because of that increase in milk, as well as just I have a greater asset base now, so I'm going to have to pay more in insurance, and I have, for better or for worse, I have more stuff to fix. So my best option really is going to be, from a financial standpoint, my best option is going to be that retrofit parlor. And why is that? Well, if you look at it, yeah, it's the second, if I don't count scenario 7, which is half the size, it's the second smallest investment. But I'm saving so much on labor. So with the Freestyle, yep, I'm spending $360 and I'm getting that 6 pounds of milk, but I'm not really saving that much on labor, not as much. Here, if I put in the retrofit parlor, I start to save all that time on my milking, and I'm getting the gains in milk. The next best scenario is going to be the new parlor. So if I want to go out and have the parlor of my dreams, as I call it, that's going to be your next best option when we look at the net annual impact. And what about the robots? Because that's the title of my presentation. Well, we already kind of talked about it, but the best option is going to be if I can wait a little while and invest in them later. So pay down the barn a little bit, and then after I've saved some money, invest in them. That's going to probably be the best way financially to go about doing it. And we can mix and match all these different tweaks too, and you might find something else, but based on what's up here, that's where we net out. Okay, so sensitivity analysis. I mentioned that we have quite a few numbers running in the background. I showed you all the assumptions at the start of my presentation, and then explained as well some of the other things that were going on. So what if some of these numbers change a little bit? Let's look at that next. So we compared a few different scenarios. The first thing I looked at was a retrofit parlor versus new robots. So I'm assuming if I put in this retrofit parlor, I'm going to get 6 more pounds of milk a day right here. And then this is my net annual impact that we talked about, that 29,000 number, okay? Well, if I don't get the milk that I thought I was going to get, my net annual impact's going to be somewhere over here. And then if I put in the robots now, I showed you your net annual impact was about $400. So it's right here on the blue square. If I can get more milk as a result of building the Freestyle and putting in the robots, well, then it might look better on an annual basis. From a cash flow standpoint, we did assume that you would replace the robots throughout their lifetime. We estimated that the robots last anywhere from 10 to 15 years. We can talk about, well, I think I could buy replacement parts and put in a new motherboard. We assume that you would have some resale value left in them and that you would just buy new robots in these scenarios, but certainly you can weigh in some other considerations. So with that, you can kind of get an idea of how the cash flows out and how it flows back in. All right, so the next scenario we looked at were, what if I get robots now, or what if I wait 5 years? How does that kind of change things? So again, I assume I'm going to get the 10 pounds, and here's my net annual impact, right? So around that $400 mark, if I put the robots in now, and then a little bit higher, I believe it was around 12 to 13,000 if I put the robots in later. If I can get more milk, my net annual impact's going to look better. And then from a cash flow standpoint, we see right away I'm making that huge investment in the robots and the robot barn. And then it gets better. I make some money. Got to do some replacements over here, and then some replacements over here again. Same story with the barn, then robots later. Huge investment to start. Then I build the robots or install the robots, and then I have to replace them again. So this is just kind of to give you an idea of, as you're spending money or as you're thinking about this, so when would I actually be having to make investments, and when would I see the cash kind of coming back in the door and benefiting me? Last scenario, what if I do a retrofit parlor versus putting in those robots later? So again, I get my 10 pounds of milk, and as I get more milk, I'm going to see that net annual impact increase. And same story with the retrofit and Freestyle. One of the reasons we're showing you these graphs with the 2 parallel lines is so that you can think a little bit about how much milk do you think you'd get out of your cows if you install the retrofit parlor and built a new Freestyle. And how much do you think you'd get if you put in the robots? Do you think this 10 number is right? Do you think the 6 number is right? Do you think, you know, actually, I think if I put in a Freestyle, I would only get a couple pounds. I don't think I'd get that 6. I think I'd be over here. But I think those robots, you know, and you should have your reasons why. I think with the robots, I actually would get, you know, milk over here. Then we can start to do some comparison around, okay, well, if you're thinking you're going to get closer to, let's say, 12 pounds, okay, well, then I'm at $20,000 annually. That doesn't look so bad. And if I'm only going to get 2 pounds, well, I'm only at 10,000 over here. Maybe the robots aren't such a bad option for me after all. We just show you this so you can think about it and start to apply it to your own operation and your own practices. And then the last slide here, last comparison sensitivity slide, here's what the cash flows look like. So hopefully what you caught on all the robot scenarios, there's that big dip, right? Because I have to invest, and that's going to be something that's ongoing with the robots. Whereas with a Parlor, once I've made that initial big investment, then I'm pretty much making money after that. I'm paying down the debt, but not investing anymore. All right, so I've talked a lot about money, and I've said from a financial standpoint a lot. There's other reasons why you might install robots, and I don't want to dismiss that. My background is as an economist, so we tend to think of things or look at things through a quantitative lens. How can I value this? How can I put numbers to it? These are other reasons that I might want to put in robots. They're hard to put a numeric value on. You may want more work-life balance. Maybe you're wanting to go to your child's soccer games. Maybe you're just wanting some time to take vacation every year, and you could get somebody to come to the farm 2 weeks a year if you just had the robots and they didn't need to milk. Maybe there's some health considerations that you have. Your knees are shot, your shoulders are shot, you know, doing the work in the parlor still isn't going to be real great on your body. So maybe that's a reason. Maybe you're just really good with the cows and you're really good at the record keeping, and your thought is, if I could just spend more time doing the detail-y stuff, keeping the stalls clean, watching the cows and so forth, I just had more time for management, I think that we would do better. That's a great reason. Those are all fine reasons. How we've been talking about this really is the differences between all those net annual values. So I'm going to flip back. I hope I don't give anyone vertigo here. How we've been talking about this is, okay, the brand new state-of-the-art option is only $400 annually, and it is positive, so it's a good thing. What you're really giving up is the difference between these two numbers. So if this is $29,000, so let's call it $29,000. Basically, if you were to opt to do the robots, what you're saying is, it's worth $29,000 to me to have that lifestyle. I'm willing to give that up as profits or whatever to spend more time elsewhere. And that's an okay thing to say. That's fine. We don't always make decisions based solely on finances. We want to, as an economist, I always say, we want to maximize our utility. What are we giving up to gain? So to gain some semblance, or to gain more of a lifestyle or a different style of life, that's legitimate. It's just hard to quantify it within a model. So these are the other considerations that we have. With that, here are your takeaways. Here are the things I hope when you leave today that you remember. Number one, the retrofit parlor really is going to be the financially best option. And we're talking about finances again. If I really want to do the robots, and I want to do it in a financially responsible way, waiting, just like our mom and dad taught us, waiting to do it is going to be the best way to go. And the last thing is, it's important to understand what the finances look like, but you also need to weigh the other considerations that you might have. I listed 3, you may have other ones. Think about those too. So with that, that's what I have in closing. I want to say thank you for having me here, and I'm happy to answer questions or show you the spreadsheet or whatever you might like to know about the economics of all of this and how we arrived at our results. Yes.
Bernie, don't you think long-term our goal is at least, and you can have a spreadsheet now, but probably isn't the most user-friendly for people, but our goal is to eventually have this spreadsheet sort of up either
Yes.
some kind of web-based dashboard or something where
Yes.
you can play around with it with your numbers.
Yes, so that's something I didn't mention it. I'm glad Jim mentioned it. What we'd like to do long term, so Bill Lazarus at the university developed this fantastic spreadsheet for us to look at all these different scenarios. We'd like to take that spreadsheet and turn it into a web-based tool. So if any of you use like the Farm Bill tool that was online or the MPP tool that was online, some sort of interface like that where you can enter your details, how much your barn is going to cost, how much your new milking system is going to cost, how many cows are you milking, what do you pay for labor? That's our long-term goal. We'll keep you posted as we learn more, but we would like to make it more user-friendly and more flexible than how it's set up today. Thank you for reminding me to say that. What else? Anything else?
Can you give me an idea, like if you were to put in a retrofit parlor, how much you're going to cut your milking time down?
So we said 4 hours. We said if you put in a freestyle, you save about 4 hours on chore labor, and then we said another 4 hours on milking labor. If you put in a retrofit parlor, and I think we said a little over 4, if you put in a brand new parlor, you still save the little over 4 hours on from the freestyle labor, and then you save about a little over 4.5 hours on the milking labor. So you save a little more milking labor on the new parlor, but overall 4 to 5 hours.
We kind of got those numbers actually. David Pommel, a few years ago, we had a big conference call when we did this, and he had done some survey with an extension person going out to people and keeping track of labor before and after running shifts. And so it's kind of, do you remember, Betty? I think we used 25,000 an hour
Yep.
in running shifts.
Yep.
Not shift and everything. We figured you could one person per man hour, about 25,000 an hour. And then as Betty mentioned in the retrofit parlor, I think we figured
50 cows per hour, and then in a brand new,
double A. A brand
Yep.
new, I think we figured
60. Yep.
That's a double eight, not a swing eight.
Pick your poison. There's not a lot of difference. I don't know, Tom, what do you, is that a fair number, 50,000 an hour?
It's another term. Any regular low line with detachers should be 4 turns. And in the swing, you probably